Every summer, a new crop of top-tier talent in the NBA becomes available in different ways, whether it be as free agents or in the trade market, and when a star player either signs with a new team or gets traded, they tend to dominate the headlines in this time. But while they will undoubtedly provide a ton of impact, this phenomenon typically results in a lot of other solid moves being overshadowed, and this brings us to the topic of today's video. Today, we'll be identifying and discussing 5 of the most underrated moves made this summer that could make a massive impact on the 2023 NBA season that most people don't seem to be paying much attention to. These are moves made involving lesser-known players to the average fan, but within their roles along with their fit on their new teams can make a big difference. Before we start though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first super underrated move from the offseason that we'll be discussing today is Donte Divincenzo signing with the Golden State Warriors. After winning the championship last season, the Warriors didn't necessarily enter the summer needing to do much to keep their team at the top, but when Gary Payton II and Otto Porter both left, the outside observers have come away believing that they lost 2 key wing players from their rotation without doing much to replace them. But this DiVincenzo signing is essentially the perfect fit between a player and a team. DiVincenzo's time in Milwaukee saw him as the team's full-time starting shooting guard in 2021 because of his non-stop energy that he gives on defense, his ability to reliably space the floor as a shooter, his impressive rebounding talent as a guard, and his underrated passing ability as a secondary playmaker. He's unfortunately suffered a serious injury during that 2021 postseason run and was still working his way back to 100% health throughout most of last season, but now he's back and ready to give good minutes to a team with championship aspirations, as he's shown he can do in the past with the Bucks. The Warriors brought him in on a 2-year contract worth just $9.2 million as well, so they got an absolute steal money-wise, and I have zero doubts that he'll take on the role Gary Payton left behind and do an even better job with it because of his more advanced offensive game. The next underrated addition made by a team this offseason that we'll be discussing is Victor Oladipo re-signing with the Miami Heat. I've discussed the Heat and their offseason a good bit in prior videos under the context that they honestly had a pretty underwhelming summer. They lost PJ Tucker in free agency, and outside of that, they didn't make any new additions that are expected to provide notable impact, so they're essentially running it back with the same team that they had last year. Now, running it back with a team that just made the conference finals, while also having the best record in the East, definitely isn't the worst idea in the world, and things could have gotten even worse had they lost Victor Oladipo to free agency as well. The Heat re-signed Oladipo to a 2-year deal worth $18.2 million total, so about $9 million annually, which is another terrific value for a player with pretty high upside. It's been about 4 years since we've seen it, but Oladipo is a former All-Star caliber player at his best. Since those All-Star days, he's dealt with injury after injury, which has hampered his performance in each of the last 3 seasons, resulting in him playing in just 60 total games over those last 3 seasons combined. And obviously, when you're never healthy, you're not going to be able to play your best. At the end of last season, during the Heat's playoff run, he displayed a few promising sparks, especially defensively, as his perimeter defense is still as impactful as ever. He's also going into this coming year healthy for the first time in a while, and while I'm not saying the Heat should be expecting him to get back to his All-Star days, I am saying that he could give them a much-needed 2-way boost as he gets closer to 100% health than he's been in a long time. The next underrated move we'll be focusing on today is the newest one that just went down, being the Los Angeles Lakers acquiring Patrick Beverley. The Lakers' season last year was nothing short of a disaster, and this offseason was going pretty poorly too, considering the circumstances, but this is definitely a positive move for them. They traded away Talen Horton-Tucker and Stanley Johnson in order to bring Patrick Beverley in, and his 2-way play is much more suited to the Lakers and what they need than anything that either Johnson or Horton-Tucker could have provided for them. It will sting a little bit to have to sell Horton-Tucker at some such a lower value because at one point, the Lakers organization was withholding him from trade talks, and they even reportedly refused to trade him for Kyle Lowry at one point. But the fact of the matter is that he hasn't developed into anything close to what they hoped for, and Beverley is much better fit for their timeline. Beverley brings a tenacity on defense that makes him pretty polarizing in the NBA world as a guy you either love or hate, but that usually makes him a guy that you love if he plays for your team. The Lakers' perimeter defense was pretty bad last year, and Beverley can come in and improve that. Additionally, Beverley is a career 38% shooter from 3, so his ability to space the floor is also a nice benefit. The next underrated move from the offseason that we'll be discussing today is the Brooklyn Nets acquiring Royce O'Neal. This is a move that got heavily overshadowed by other news going on at the time because the team traded a first-round pick for him basically at the exact same time that Kevin Durant had originally requested a trade. So because of that, the entire world was focused on how the Nets could possibly be imploding. Meanwhile, the team had just brought in a pretty valuable contributor in a position of need to help bolster their rotation. Now, with hindsight on our side, knowing that Kevin Durant won't be getting his wish and will be returning to the Nets for this upcoming season, we can look at this move as one of the most underrated of the entire summer. Royce O'Neal was the best perimeter defender on the Utah Jazz last season. He started every game he played for them, and he has shot 39% from 3 in each of the last 2 seasons. The Nets were an incredibly top-heavy team last year that relied a ton on Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to do the heavy lifting without many valuable role players around them besides Patty Mills, who at his age got burnt out near the end of the season. O'Neal fits in perfectly as a guy who can help them on defense and space the floor without needing the ball in his hands, and the Nets will be better because of it. And finally, the last underrated move from the summer we'll be discussing today is the Philadelphia 76ers acquiring D'Anthony Melton. The 76ers bench scored the 3rd fewest points in the league last year compared to the rest of the NBA benches, and in the playoffs, the team's bench scored the fewest points per game out of the 16 playoff teams. One of the biggest issues was that the team's depth was either made up of streaky shooters who are liabilities on defense, or a top-tier defender like Matisse Thybulle who provides nothing on the offensive end, thus making them all difficult to commit to in a rotation on a consistent basis. Melton, however, provides an excellent balance of both. As a backup point guard who has shot 39% from 3 over the last 2 seasons, scored about 10 points per game off of the bench, slashes to the basket well and can operate either as a backup point guard or an off-ball shooting guard, and he's an outstanding perimeter defender. The Grizzlies were able to maintain the 2nd best record in the NBA last season despite Ja Morant missing extended time because of injury, thanks in large part to the contributions of players like Melton, so he'll be a big boost to the Sixers team that needs depth pretty badly. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think some of the most underrated moves were from this summer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.